Thank you for joining us tonight for tonight's Griffins at Home. Griffins at Home is a virtual series. If you're not familiar, we started it last June during COVID as an opportunity for alumni and students and friends of the university to stay connected in a time that we weren't seeing each other in person or, when there was no personal contact at all. So, welcome. And tonight we have, as you know, Nick Schaefer, who is our in-house popular person, and he's here to tell us how to ace your virtual interview. So he will give us tips and tricks on what to do and what not to do, and I will pass it over to Nick. Enjoy.
Thank you, Jonna. So I'm going to start out by sharing my screen and then we'll get started here. 1 second. Okay, does everybody see the PowerPoint? Okay, good. As Jonna said, my name is Nick. Career development at Gwinnett is a two-person office. It's besides myself, you'll see Casey's headshot on the right side too. So it's myself and Casey. If you want to reach out to us for help, the best way is by email. I do check our office phone, but sometimes I forget, but I check email all the time. So it's cd@gmercyu.edu. And at the bottom here, I'm going to talk about our website a few times throughout the presentation, but take note of our website. We have a lot of good stuff on there, including interviewing information, lots of good resume information and samples, cover letters, job search resources, job search strategies, all sorts of things that will be beneficial for you. So before I jump into what we're going to focus on tonight, I do want to mention to everybody, feel free to ask questions at any point. You don't have to wait to the end of the presentation. If it's a question that you think that you want me to just glance at, just type it in the chat box. But if it's an important question, wait till the thought's done and just turn your audio on and ask. So that way we can make this a very interactive, helpful presentation. So before I get into interviewing tonight, I'm going to quickly go over our services and resources so you are aware how we can help you now. And as Jonna mentioned, we are completely free for alumni too and available for alumni. So for both students and alumni, whether you're a grad student, online student, undergraduate student, doesn't matter. We are available for you. And we are also open in the summer. I think sometimes people forget. So if you need help this summer, which will be here before we know it. For interviewing, I'm kind of focusing on a few different areas tonight. Of course, we're going to talk about virtual interviewing, but a lot of the tips you would do for virtual interviewing are very, very similar, if not the same as in person, but I will go into some that are specifically for virtual interviewing, some basics. And the third bullet, I think, is one of the most important things you could take away from today or just interviewing in general is telling stories, sharing examples. If you want to stand out, pay attention to that part tonight. And then I'm going to talk about Big Interview. That's a free online interviewing website we have for students and alumni. I will talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So some of our services and resources, besides interviewing, we can help you with your resume and cover letter. I was just talking with Allison, who's on tonight, who mentioned I reviewed her resume. If you need your resume reviewed, there's a few different things you can do. You could email to me, and I will email you back suggestions. You can schedule an appointment with me, like over Zoom right now, and I can bring your resume up for you and I to see, and we'll go over section by section. Or when we're back in person, hopefully in the fall semester, we could do an in-person appointment too. I'll even do a phone appointment, but Zoom or email is probably the best for a resume and cover letter. If you are searching for an internship or job, we can schedule an appointment too. That could be phone or Zoom, or if you have questions, I can respond to them through email. That includes strategies, resources, tips, possible contacts with employers or alumni, things like that. Interviewing, I actually just did a couple this week. If you want to do a practice interview, we could set up a Zoom practice interview. That way you could practice your own virtual interview. Just tell me, what kind of field you're looking to get into, or if you have a specific job coming up, you send me the job description. So I will gear to practice interview questions towards that field or job and employer. We also have a great interviewing packet on our website that has basic information. It has sample interviewing questions on different fields, including teaching, nursing, business, and general ones too. All sorts of interviewing tips, and I'll go through some of them tonight. If you've been to our website and you checked out our events page, we still have a number of job fairs or internship fairs. They're all virtual, of course, but if you go on our events page, you will see them. We update our page probably every week. And if you go on, and I'm going to bring up Handshake in a few minutes, but we post a lot of career fairs and networking events on there. The bottom, that's a reminder. Best way to schedule an appointment, send us an email and let us know your preference, email, video, or phone. And if it's phone or video, just tell us what days and times work well for you. So any questions before we jump into interviewing? Give myself a chance to take a sip of water too. I had a lot of student appointments today, so my voice goes in and out. Just please disregard it. Okay, well, before I get to interview, I forgot I had this. So on this page is our 3 websites that you should take note of. The first one's the career development page that I mentioned before. If you are not familiar with Handshake, that is our online job and internship posting website that's completely free for Gwinnett students and alumni. If you're an alum, you have to register as alum with a personal email account, and then we approve you. If you are a student, you automatically have an account already, even if you don't know it. It's the same login as your Gwinnett email account. Big Interview, that's the Practice AI interviewing website, and I'll mention, talk more about that later on, but I just want to make you aware of the website. By the way, all these links are on our career development general website, so you don't have to memorize the URLs. And if social media is your thing, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Jana and I operate the GMercyU University alumni LinkedIn group, so feel free to go on there. We have over 1,000 people in there. We do post a lot of jobs, events, and things like that on all of our social media pages. All right, any questions before we jump into interviewing on our services or resources? Let's get into the main topic for tonight. Oh, Allison, did you have a question? Let me see. We unmute.
Sorry, yes, I'm muted. So for Handshake, I know I'm getting a lot of my, so I'm planning to be a teacher. I'm getting a lot of my job opportunities through educatepa.com. I believe that's the website. Would Handshake be a worthwhile secondary resource for me, or is Educate PA maybe the better resource?
Yeah, so for teachers, I would say your focus should probably be PA Educator or PA Reap. You're probably on PA Reap too, or know of it. Use Handshake. Maybe you look at those other 2 more frequently, and you look at Handshake every couple of weeks. Usually school districts will post on, some will post on Handshake too, but you'll definitely get the information on PA Educator or PA Reap.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So for interviewing, I like to break it down to make it easy and simplify it for you. 3 steps. You have before, during, and after the interview. As you see here, take notice of what I bolded and underlined, the before part. I absolutely feel that's the most important element for having a successful interview. Think of it like a class presentation. If you walked into a class presentation, or if you're a student teacher, you walked in there and you didn't prepare, you didn't maybe practice, you're not going to feel as confident. You're more prone to mistakes. Same thing with an interview. If you really put in the full amount of research and practice before the interview, yes, you'll be nervous. That's natural or human, and you probably should feel a little nervous, but you're going to feel more confident. You're going to speak more clearly, and you're going to make less mistakes, and you're going to showcase your talents more than if you didn't practice. So you're basically setting yourself up for success. And at the bottom here, besides practicing, I think research is huge, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. You need to do research not just on the job and the employer, but yourself. What do you want to communicate to the employer? You got to have a game plan for that. Again, that's regardless whether it's remote or in person. I like to say you need to dissect the job description. You really need to thoroughly go through it. I'm kind of old school when it comes to this. I like to print out a job description and circle, highlight things that, when I'm working with a student or an alum, when they're applying for a job, and that way information stands out and you know what kind of key terms or key skills or experience that you want to mention in your interview, and also for your resume and cover letter too. the whole point of this is you want to personalize what you have to what the employer wants. Some of the things you want to take notice of in a job description or other ways is three different things: your technical skills, your transferable skills from both you and the employer, and some other areas. That includes knowledge, experience, other types of traits they're looking for, qualities, but mainly technical and transferable skills. What I mean by technical usually is not technology, it's the specific skills for that job. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat box, or we can unmute you to ask it. Let me make sure. I think I had a couple. Oh, no questions. So here's an example of I got this from a website for a communications job. And take notice of the items I bolded and underlined, because these are items that, if I'm pretending I was job searching, that I have experience in, or skills in, or knowledge in, that maybe you want to bring a story or an example or talk about during the course of the interview. You don't want to blindly go to interview and just wing it. You want to have a game plan. And by really thoroughly going through the job description, yes, sometimes you'll apply for a job that doesn't have a great job description, or it's very, short. So then you need to think of, what would they be looking for if I was hiring somebody? So put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes. So as you see here, here's some that are highlighted: event planning, managing contracted vendors, writing skills, whether it's a newsletter or other type of content. So you want to go through the job description. Does that make sense to everyone? So, Jonna, can you unmute everybody? Because I want people to kind of throw out some guesses here.
Sure thing.
What are some skills, basic skills, do you think employers are looking for, no matter what field you're applying for? Or if you wanted to put yourself in the hiring managing shoes, what skills would you look for in an employee? So yell some skills out.
Self-motivated team player.
Yeah, being able to work with others for sure.
Organized.
Tech
Absolutely.
savvy.
Empathetic, depending on the field for sure.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see empathy pop up more on this list. It's not going to be on this list, I don't think, but I think because this list is from a survey from 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, but because of the whole changes in this whole world, I think you might see that pop up more. So this is what I'm about to show you is a list from a giant survey of human resources professionals, recruiters, hiring managers, and they talk about what skills they look for in a candidate. So it encompasses a lot of different fields. Some may pertain to your field, some may not. So here's the list. Problem solving, communication skills are very, important for most fields. Creativity, definitely most fields, but obviously if you're going to teaching or a field like that. Flexibility is one that we hear from employers about almost any job, being flexible and adaptable. Leadership is a term that's thrown around a lot. Ability to work with a team. Somebody mentioned being a team player before. Taking initiative. If you're an undergraduate student, we get that from employers a lot. Unfortunately, I think people stereotype younger students, just like when I was a student, they think that we don't take the initiative, but you need to kind of be able to talk about you taking the initiative, whether it's an internship job, student club, something like that. So the reason why I'm showing you this list, you use the job description list, you use the transferable skills list that employers look for, and now you start to get a good picture of what to talk about during your interview. So you need to sort of think of what transferable skills are you strong in? And then take it a step further. How can I prove that to them? You just can't say, yeah, I'm very good at solving problems, I'm very creative, and then stop. Like, why should they believe you? Follow it up with a story or an example. Whoops. So I want everybody to just take, 1 to 2 minutes. Why don't you pick one from this list? Pick one or two if you have time, and just write a short sentence or a couple sentences of an example of a time that you utilize one of these skills or some sort of story. If you have any questions, let me know. Give you about 2 minutes. Okay. Before take a few examples, I want to let you know the reason why I'm showing you this list too, besides what I mentioned, is you might be at an interview where the employer says, "Give me an example of when you solved a problem. Give me an example when you demonstrated leadership or adaptability." So you will have to provide a story. Most cases, you have no choice there. I do work with students and alumni and say, just in case if you can't think of one, you can always say, I can't think of a specific example, but here's what I would do. So you at least have to tell them how you would react and what you would do if you don't have a specific one. But who would like to share the skill and a short story? Any takers? Thank you, Allison.
I can share. So I chose flexibility and adaptability, excuse me. So I'm currently I'm student teaching kindergarten online, 100% online. And just today, we had the instance where a couple of our websites that we really rely on to provide like content and videos and help us out, they were down. And so I had to create Google Slides kind of on the fly just to help my kids move forward. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't exactly what I had planned, but it did get the job done in the nick of time. So
Thank you. Very good example. And I will show you everybody a way to sort of help a story flow well. Allison did a very good job of telling that in a good example. But I'll show you a great 3-step process that'll be easy to remember to help you tell these stories. But let's take one more example. Who wants to give it a try?
I'll go.
Thank you.
I'm Giorgio, by the way, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
I chose self-motivated and strong work ethic. And I said a couple years ago, actually a year and a half ago, I was about 300 pounds, and I decided I needed change really bad. I was unhealthy. I was unhappy with myself. So I joined a gym by my house, and here I am today. I lost 92 pounds on my own, and I'm still going, Haven't stopped yet.
Awesome. And well, first of all, congratulations. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
Second of all, that story, and you kind of beat me to it. I'm going to mention this later on. So Giorgio's story there can fit into a lot of different skills here, and a lot of different questions that were asked. So that's one of the cool things with when you're practicing stories, you can bend the story or change how you tell the story, obviously still being honest and fit into many different areas. So good examples, both of you. So this is a little graph that I made. It's not the greatest thing, but I wanted to show you how your skills need to meet the middle of what the employer needs and that job needs. So that's why I kind of want to go back to what I said a couple of slides ago. dissect the job description, go through your own transferable skills, make a list of certain skills that are important. If you need help with this too, I have other websites that can help you find skills, knowledge, and qualifications for a specific career field. But usually between those two, that will help you out. And then in the middle, you're like, okay, I need to kind of make sure I could tell a story on this skill or this need because they feel it's important. I have it, and now I want to showcase that. And by the way, this goes beyond interviewing. Do this on your resume, and you should absolutely do this on your cover letter too. Your cover letter is a great spot for showcasing this stuff. Any questions at the moment? Good. Okay. You probably heard of the phrase elevator speech, 30-second commercial. Sometimes people call it 60-second commercial. I think as a professional, if you're searching for a job, this is one of the most important things you could do for a few different reasons. If you can prepare and be ready for your elevator speech or 30-second commercial, it will help you during your interview. It would help you when you're networking. It'll help you if you're just telling somebody what you want to do, what kind of job you're looking for, about yourself. It helps you at a job fair. If you walk up to a table at a job fair, what do you say? So this helps you in all circumstances. It comes down to two things. You're talking about who you are and what do you want. You try to stay away from too much biography information, too much personal stuff. You kind of want to, keep it professional towards the employer, towards the job. Sometimes it overlaps. That's fine. But if it doesn't overlap, stick to the professional stuff. So for interviewing specifically, it answers the question, if you've ever been asked this at an interview, tell me about yourself or some version of that. That's usually a common question at an interview for most fields. Usually it's just to get the interview started rather than jumping into a tough question. The interviewee will say that. And I mentioned before, try to stay away from personal stuff. Focus on education, your experience, your knowledge, even your skills, and then geared into what you're looking for. By the way, the reason why it's called elevator speech, if you ever go in an elevator and you're trying to make small talk with people, that's why. It's like, oh, how could you explain this before you get to the next floor or when you're getting off? So it's usually 30 to 60 seconds. Just a little background on that. I find stuff like that fascinating. So here's an example that I created. Take note, this is absolutely less than 30 seconds, but I just want to show you the flow of an elevator speech. Hi, my name is Nick. I'm a senior at Glennon, majoring in psych. So introduce me. Now it gets into the next step, what you're interested in. My passion is working with adolescents, and I'm currently interning at a community-run program for at-risk teens. So now you kind of, okay, Nick's a psych major. He's interning, and he's interning with this population. So the rest of it is focused on what you want to do or where you're headed. At this point, I'm looking to secure a position that will allow me to further explore working with at-risk youth in an educational setting. So this second part can change. Obviously, if you're speaking to a specific employer, it should be geared towards that position. I was speaking here as if you were sort of introducing yourself to somebody at a career fair or a networking event, because interview skills and those skills are very, very similar. So why don't you try to do your own 30-second commercial elevator speech? What would you do if somebody said at an interview, tell me about yourself? So I'll give you put a little pressure on you. I'll give you about 1 minute. And don't try to write out a whole sentence. Just write out a couple key points. When I practice with students and alumni, one of the things I notice as an issue with people is they try to write out a full paragraph for their answer or full sentences. Just write down key points, and that will help you a lot. I'm going to flip back so you guys take a look at this as a guide. Don't make yours exactly like this, but kind of help you with coming up with it. So I'll give you about 1 minute. Okay, before I ask somebody to try theirs, I do want to get a little bit more information for the following slides. I got Allison. I know Allison is a grad student education program. Giorgio, what is your background? Are you a student or an alum, and what was your major?
I'm a student at Penn State right now in rehabilitation and human services, and I actually just applied to Gwinnett for their counseling program.
Oh, awesome.
Or
What area counseling?
School counseling.
Very cool. And I was a school counseling grad. If you need to chat with me, just send me an email. Not at Gwinnett, though, a different school, but I'd be happy to talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Sure.
that.
And what about you, Marissa? What's your background?
I'm also applying to grad school for counseling, clinical mental health counseling. I have an undergraduate degree in theater,
And where'd you go to undergrad at?
Temple University.
Nice. If you need any help or I can connect you with alumni to chat with too for that program, let me know. We can help you out.
Yes, thank you so much.
And what about the phone number? I'm not sure who that is, but if you could give us your background a little bit, if you're listening. Okay, we'll move on. Would somebody like to share what you would kind of say for tell me about yourself? It doesn't have to be perfect, just sort of, let's pretend you're interviewing for a school counseling position, a counseling position, or a teacher position. And that was the first question. How would you react? Yes, let me unmute Marissa here. Thank you, Marissa.
I'll share. I majored in musical theater in undergrad at Temple University. I've been working in the performing arts as a teacher and a performer for the past few years. During the pandemic, I got a job tutoring a first grader who's doing school 100% virtually, and I really liked getting to know her and helping her with her emotional and academic success. So I'm looking to obtain my master's in clinical mental health counseling to work with children in the future and to work with children.
Very cool. And obviously your answer could be different if it's for a job or whether it's for grad school or, you could always easily adapt that. And Marissa, as you're talking too, you might want to ask the program too about if you want to become licensed, the LPC and all that kind of stuff. If it's okay. As long as if you have any questions, let me know. I work with a lot of school counseling students. They are virtual, but they do utilize career development. Any
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead. What's up?
So originally I was going to do school counseling because I wanted to work with children, but then I decided to do the LPC route and was wondering if I could still work at a school instead of doing private practice if I had that licensure.
That's a great question. I would ask the program coordinator. If you don't have the number of the program coordinator, let me know. If they don't know the answer, I'll find out for you. But right now, I don't want to give you the wrong information. But I do know there are a decent number of school counselors who get their LPC afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So you need 3,000 plus hours of counseling, supervised counseling. But if you don't know that information, I get that to you. It's on the Board of Ed or the Pennsylvania School Counseling Association's website too.
Okay, thank you.
Keep me posted. I know that's a generic answer, but email me if you don't get the information you need. I'll get it for you.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So interviewing, we're going to get more into specific virtual stuff in a little bit, and also telling stories, which I like to say telling stories rather than giving examples. But interviewing usually boils down to three main things. You have to talk about your background. You have to talk about your education and goals. And then the bottom one is behavioral-based questions. And if you heard that term, that's basically telling a story or talking about a trait or skill or knowledge in a given situation. Before I get into some questions and things like that, I want to mention some other elements that are vital for you being chosen, you getting a job offer. I've been in a number of job search committees. I'm sure Jana has too at Gwinnett. I've helped a number of students and alumni interview in the past. Your personality matters a lot if you are selected. Because think about it. If there was dozens, if not more than 100 candidates applied for a job, you got through the screening interviews, you got through the in-person or remote interviews, and there's like maybe 3 to 5 people being interviewed at the end. A lot of you have the same background, the same education, same skills, maybe even very similar experience. So what determines who gets your job offer? Lots of times it's fit. Do you fit in with this specific person, depending upon your field? Do they believe you'll fit in with the school, this company? Are you going to fit in with the team? So that is very, very important. And some things in personality it comes across is your enthusiasm, your passion. Are you friendly and approachable? So you can convey this stuff in a remote or in-person interview. It's difficult sometimes in remote, but how do you do that in a remote interview? Change your tone sometimes. If you're like, yeah, I'm very passionate about becoming a teacher or a school counselor, like that's not going to excite anybody. Smile. That's important. First of all, that's one way to come across as friendly. If you're talking about working with kids and you want to work with children, and as a teacher or school counselor, talk about it and show some excitement. You do want to practice this though, because you don't want to come across as like wacky, but you do want to come across also as excited too. The bottom part, another thing that can separate you versus the other candidates is you using examples during your answers. Lots of people interview and they either give a very, very short example or they give no example at all. So, however, please take this though. Don't try to have an example for every answer that you give because that's too much. Pick and choose when you think it's important and when you should use one. So why should you use stories? I've already mentioned that you'll stand out. The top statement is my opinion. I think it's one of the most important things you can do in an interview because you'll see in the next slide. So please remember that statement when I show you an actual research that's done on giving examples and telling stories. It gives you a better chance for you to communicate your stellar qualifications and showcase your qualifications. It brings things to life. Think about your resume. If you didn't use action verbs, if you didn't use action phrases, your resume would be very boring if it said, I did this, I did that. Same thing with an interview. If you never use stories, you're just another candidate you're not going to stand out when you leave the interview room. And I put a little sub bullet there. Anybody can read your resume or LinkedIn profile. They can get that information on there. Yes, you could reiterate stuff in your interview, but you also want to tell it in a more compelling way. I feel, if you want to do an analogy here, it's sort of like it's a picture painted with words. And what I mean by that is now they can visualize. If you're telling a story, the interviewee can visualize this and kind of see it from themselves. Again, that will stand out. So there's, here's one other thing I want to mention before. I kind of mentioned this a few slides ago. You don't need a story for every question. So what I usually tell people to do is come up with like 5 to 7 stories. Just jot down in Microsoft Word or a piece of paper the title of the story. So, whether it was something from student teaching or a past job or a class assignment or project, just jot down the title and then put a couple bullet points underneath it of things that you want to talk about in the story. The reason why I said only 5 to 7 is in most circumstances, one of those stories can go into many different questions. It's not just one story per question. That's not the way it works. Plus, it'll make your life that much harder and you'll be that much more stressed out. So this will help you feel less stress and more confident when you go into an interview room. So I have an example at the bottom. This is actually a real example from a couple of years ago working with an alum, I believe. They prepared a story that actually could have fit easily into these 3 questions. What is your greatest strength? That's a very common question. An example of a work achievement, or how you handle a difficult employee or customer. So that story could probably fit into more questions, but that's just one idea there. And I want to go back to the greatest strength question, because if you're asked that question, you shouldn't just say, yeah, I'm strong at lesson planning. Follow it up with, for example, blah, blah, blah. It'll make it that much more powerful. It does leave a lasting impression, and there's proof behind this. It's not just me saying this. So there was a long-term study by a professor at Stanford. Her name is Jennifer Acker. I think that's how you pronounce that. But she, in her research, and this is the geek in me, the research showed that stories and examples and interviews are up to 22 times more memorable than if you just said a fact or a statement. So that's not like 5%, that's not like 6%. 22 times more is a lot. So if you want to stand out, tell a story, and tell a story the right way, and tell a strong story, which we'll get into in a second. And another important reason why telling a story or giving an example is important is because it answers one of the most common questions you get in an interview, which is called behavioral interviewing questions. And those questions force you to tell a story. So if you don't know what a behavioral question is, I just want to go over this for like 30 seconds. A behavioral question tries to figure out how you reacted to a past situation because they believe the way you react in the past is probably going to be the way you react in the future. And it asks you to provide an example. Oftentimes, these questions start with, give me an example of a time when you, or tell me about a time when, something like that, where you're not just going to say a couple words, you're going to provide an example from a past situation that you did or reacted to. Here's an example. Tell me about a time when you worked effectively under pressure. I feel like everybody here, we've all experienced this, especially the past year, but probably the last bunch of years as a student or in work. But here's this example. I've been working on a key project that was scheduled for delivery to a client in 60 days. So it's painting the picture here. My boss came to me and said that we needed to speed it up and be ready in a quicker amount of time. So 15 days less. By using numbers, by the way, people can relate to that. The middle part, I made it into a challenge for my staff, and we effectively shared the workload and focused on different items and got the job done in 42 days. So even better. There could be more details there, but I wanted to kind of show you there. On the bottom, of course, I had a great group of people. So now the person is, if you're the interviewer, you're like, oh, giving credit to the team, complimenting the team, you're coming across as friendly and approachable. And then it kind of mentions that they allocated the task and stuff. So as you see by the question alone, you kind of have to be prepared to tell some sort of story. So how do you answer these stories? How do you prepare to tell it in a good flow, an exciting way? So here's a good, easy technique. And I often use this when I'm interviewing students and alumni. It's called SAR. If you Google this, you'll probably see a couple of different ways. Another version is STAR with a T. I just take out the T because it's very similar to situation and it makes it easier for you to memorize this. So the first step is talk about the situation. The middle, what action did you take? In the end, the positive results. And I do emphasize positive because unless they ask you a question like, give me an example of a time when you failed at something, it should be a positive result. You don't want to speak negatively of you or your former job or your former employer. By the way, let's go back to that one question I just said. If they do ask you for an example when you failed at something, talk about what you learned from it too and what you are doing because of it. So you're going to talk about the positive aspects of failing at something. Obviously, every single professional in this world has failed at something, so it's not a surprise. And take a look at the percentage points here. That's just a rough guide. You don't have to stick to this 100%, but the middle part should be at least 50%, if not 60% of the time spent on this answer. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions? Did you say yes, Allison? You had a question? Okay. So why don't you pick one question?
That was a
Oh,
helpful breakdown. I think that's a helpful acronym and a helpful breakdown. So thank you.
And to remind everybody too, this is also in our interviewing packet, so you don't have to memorize this. The recording will be available afterwards too. So
Hello?
yes. What's your question?
My name is Maggie. I'm on the phone. I don't know if you can hear me because
Yes, we can
I
hear
have
you.
been mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My question is, how can you be current The reason why I asked this question is because I'm not just graduated. I have been in the field for a long time, but I feel like I need to go back to school to learn some more. So I'm already in a job. I work, but I'm one of those um, old school, old schooler.
Uh-huh.
How can I stay current so I can compete with the younger generation?
Yeah, great question. And if you don't mind me asking, what field are you in? What career field?
Uh, I'm in psychology, and currently I am working as a mental health worker for behavioral health care.
Great question. So here's a few ideas for anybody in any field. I would start out in LinkedIn, use LinkedIn group pages. So I know there's a National Association of Social Workers has a group page because I'm part of it. You could read articles that people post on there. You can network with them to talk about new things in the field or new strategies or any kind of new stuff. You could belong to a professional association, attend conferences. You could even do a webinar. Lots of organizations are offering webinars, and you could put this stuff on your resume. And of course, you could talk about this during an interview. You could bring up the fact that you continue to want to get better at your job and want to learn. And then you could say, for example, I attended a conference or I've attended a webinar or I participate on a LinkedIn group page. So everybody on here, whether it's school counseling, teaching, any kind of mental health field, I guarantee you there's at least a dozen or more LinkedIn group pages on there. If you can't find them, let me know. I've been using LinkedIn, I think since 2004. So I'm pretty good at it. If you need help with LinkedIn, let me know. But besides LinkedIn, look for professional associations. You could break it down to chapters locally, and that will help you a lot too. It's not always another degree or another certification. Oftentimes, it's just a webinar or a conference or reading a journal, things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So why don't we take a short period, take 1 minute and just use the SAR approach for one of these questions. So situation, action, result. How would you answer either one of these? Tell me about a time when you worked effectively under pressure, or give me an example of when you demonstrated excellent communication or leadership skills. So I'm going to give you about 1 minute. Generally, I give people a little bit longer, but I want to make sure I cover the other slides. Okay. You don't have to share an example, but did anybody have any issues using the SAR technique with answering these questions? And do you see the value in it? Okay. So let's take a step back. When you're preparing for your interview, so before you have the interview, write your stories out. Again, just have a headline, a few bullet points, and then what you can do is have somebody ask you that question or just talk out loud yourself. That helps a lot too. You don't want to, just speak silently about it because you want to practice your tone and stuff. And then try the flow of the story by using the SAR technique. In our interviewing packet, we have a number of behavioral interviewing questions, so you can kind of practice a few of them to get the feel for it. I'm going to jump back into interviewing in a second, but an often ignored part of the interview is the after interview part. The thank you note is more, and I say this a lot to people, is more than just saying thank you for your time, and so forth. If you want to stand out, and again, it's all about standing out. Little things matter, whether it's an answer or telling a story, your resume, your cover letter, or a thank you note. there's two things you can add to your thank you note besides thank you for your time. I'm still interested in this position. You can reiterate something. Let's say you walked out of the interview and you're like, I'm not sure they grasp it how good I am at this. So mention that in interview. You could say, let's say, for example, you're strong with this area, whether it's your skills or knowledge, you could kind of discuss that in the middle part of your thank you note. Or let's say during the interview and afterwards, you're like, I think they're concerned about this part about my background, or I don't have enough experience in this. I can just tell. Well, you can address that in your thank you note, because if you know it and they know it, why try to pretend it's not there? So you can say something like, I know I don't have experience in this area, but let me tell you that I'm a quick learner. For example, so you kind of give a short story in your thank you note right there. And that will help you come across as being honest and showcasing that you are a quick learner and adaptable and can quickly do this job without them being concerned. So I think that will be a big help for you. We do have an example thank you note in our interviewing packet too, so you can take a look at that. As I mentioned before, the previous slides talked about interviewing tips for remote, in person, even over the phone too. But here are some specific remote interviewing tips. You do want to clarify the logistics. That's whether it's in person or remote. But for remote technology, for example, when Jonna sent me the link for today, we logged on 20 minutes early just to make sure things were working. I asked her if the lighting was okay, and we were just, you can do that if you can, if they send you a Zoom link and you're familiar with Zoom, you can be very confident. But they send you a technology you never used before, make sure you have it downloaded on your computer. Don't wait until a minute before you're supposed to hop on, because if it doesn't work and your computer restarts and all this other stuff and you're like 5 minutes late, that's not going to look good. Check your technology and environment, try to be in an area that's well lit. If you need headphones, sometimes I use headphones, sometimes I don't. For an interview, I probably would use headphones. And your background should be as good as possible. Try to remove distractions. The third bullet is vital. I would say this is even for a phone interview too. Even though they can't see you, you do want to dress the part for a couple of reasons. It puts you in the professional mood and it gets you professionally ready. Go as far, even if it's a phone interview, to wear nice shoes too. I would wear as if you were in person. So whether it's Zoom or a phone, dress for success. You still want to maintain eye contact, good posture, and be engaged. This is why it's good to practice this. If you want to do a practice interview with me through Zoom, we can, work on that just to make sure things are okay. The quiet environment is, you obviously want to try to be in a quiet environment, but I think everybody understands that it's very hard to do that 100% of the time now. Everybody has distractions, whether it's family, an animal, a pet, all sorts of noises outside the house or apartment and things like that. So, but try your best. And if something does come up, you can just quickly apologize or even have a laugh about it. I've been on plenty of calls with employers where there's all sorts of noises and, things are more than okay. But the one noise though, that you do have control over is your phone. I've been in a number of meetings or discussions with employers or staff, and you hear phones going off, and it is very distracting. For an interview, that probably will be held against you. So silence your phone so it's not there. And I wouldn't even have your phone next to you, because if you see it flashing, it's a distraction for you. So, either turn it upside down, turn it off, or put it, away from you. 2 ways to practice with us individually or with Big Interview. So here's a whole slide on Big Interview. The one thing I want to mention, if you go to the career development web page, you could get all this on there, including the link. So you don't have to memorize this, but Big Interview gives you a chance, and this is good for you too, Marissa. If you have to interview for grad school, you could do a practice interview for jobs, internships, graduate school, anything like that. It has specific questions for different career fields. It doesn't have every career field, but most. It has education, has school counseling. It has different areas of mental health, or whether it's social worker or other areas of psych. And AI will ask you a question, and then you can video record your answer. You can just review yourself answering the question to see how you did. Or you could email me and say, Nick, can you review my answers? And what I'll do is type out underneath that comments based on all your answers. You can ask a faculty member to review that. So I believe Giorgio and Marissa, you're not students yet, right? So if you can't get into Big Interview, let me know. I think you could probably create an account. I could probably give you a generic account to use. So if you want to use it to get ready for something, just let me know individually. If you don't have a GMercyU email already, but it's completely free for students and alumni, and the students and alumni have used it so far have given me great feedback, and it's very good for you to just practice with a video and to see how you do in it. So you could do two things again with me or Casey in career development, or use Big Interview.
I know that also that our current counseling students are interviewing, so this is a wonderful resource. So please feel free to take advantage of it.
Thank you, Jonna. That's good to know too. Last year, I think 2 years ago, we had an entire class in communications that used it for their class assignment, and it was remarkable to see how well they did for their interview. I'm a big person when it comes to next steps, so you know what to do next. So if I was to give you sort of an order, I think preparing your story should be one, because it's hard to do. Think of the stories and then practice using SAR technique and things like that, but also reviewing job descriptions and the transferable skills before you even tell those stories. Practice. Remember way back when I mentioned the before the interview, I think, is the most important. So you need to research and practice before you jump into just answering questions. And I know this was an interviewing presentation, but I like to remind people these skills that you identify, transferable or for the job description, also 100% can be part of your resume, cover letter, and even your LinkedIn profile. You could talk about them in your qualifications or profile or summary, or even your descriptions underneath a job or a position on your resume too. You should, I like to tell people, create that match for everything, your resume, your cover letter, your interviewing, and you should personalize it. The reason why you want to give the impression that this is the job you want and this is the place you want to work at. So let's pretend that I was interviewing with Jonna for a position at Gwen and Mercy, and I was just saying very generic things. I didn't know the school's mission. I didn't know anything about the school. Why should they believe that I really want this job and work at Gwinnett? So think about that when you're interviewing for a position. You want to come across that you want this specific job and you want to work for this employer. I left time for questions. I think we're pretty good time here. And then here's my email again. I answer the email cd@GMercyU. It's a little easier to spell than Schaefer, so people get it wrong all the time. I will get back to you as soon as I can. I think we're very good at customer service and we're very responsive. And here's our website again. This is where you'll find that interviewing packet. Lots of information we went over today is in that packet. Big interviews on there and other stuff is on there too. So what questions do you have? You can type in the chat box or you can ask.
I noticed that I know you're recording this. Are you guys going to send this to us by any chance, or is there any way we can access it?
We'll post it on our Griffins at Home webpage, and it should be up within about 48 hours or so.
Thank you so much.
And then, sure, you can utilize that, as you need. And there are other sessions on there as well.
All righty.
And John, it's a YouTube link, right?
Yes.
Let's see, we have a question in the chat box. How do interview questions differ between a job or an internship or grad school? Well, grad school might focus more on your goals. Like, why do you want this degree, whether it's undergrad or master's degree? So if it's Marissa, they'd be like, why do you want to go into this clinical counseling degree? What do you plan on doing with it? Maybe questions about why you chose your undergraduate major or you're changing careers. For a job or internship, they're focused a lot on the qualifications of the job. You meet them and the skills and the knowledge and the experience of the job. So it's a little different. I would say a job or internship interview is usually more intense than a graduate school one. Did you find this helpful? I know interviewing has a lot of stuff. I know I covered a lot of different areas, but I would say if you need to review this presentation again, like Jonna said, it'll be up in 2 days probably. Um, and then take a look at the packet, and then schedule an appointment with me or Casey, and we'll work with you one-on-one to help you understand interviewing or help you get prepared for your interview. Looks like we have a question.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, I have another question. For the counseling graduate program, the interview is a group interview. I don't think I've ever done a group interview. How is it different from an individual interview?
It's different because I think people feel a little bit more nervous when you have those equal to you in the same room. So what I would do, and you can be distracted too, because you start thinking about that person's answer or that person, what they're saying, rather than what you want to participate in. So I would say that you need to be flexible in your mind. And if you are a very like straightforward stuff person and you don't like there to be distractions, I think you need to kind of go in there and kind of adapt. And don't be afraid to speak to it. Usually they will ask everybody individual questions, make sure people ask. But if you feel like you're not speaking much, make sure you either raise your hand or say something after somebody. Don't be hesitant to answer a question. But I wouldn't be that intimidated. Lots of people tell me that they feel once it gets started, like a minute into it, they feel a lot more calm and relaxed, and even more relaxed than if it's just you and like 3 employers. So I think that it's not much different. You still need to prepare a very, very similar way.
Okay, thank you.
Mentally, just be more flexible.
I just had one for Penn State, but it was over Zoom, and I know I'm pretty sure Gwen is still in person. Am I correct?
For the school council one is, I think, going to be in person. Is that what they said, Marissa, for that one? Zoom?
I'm not sure. I think I assumed it was over Zoom.
Okay, because I know the counseling program comes back on campus once a year, I believe it is. I forget what the program is. I'm sorry, Giorgio. What were you saying?
No. I thought I'm almost positive she said it was still in person, but I know if it is over Zoom, like I know mine for Penn State was it was a group, like, so you had different Zooms that you would go into, and the one was like an all around group and you were with everyone, but you also had an individual interview at the same, like at a separate time. Is that similar, or is this like this is just full on group? They're asking everybody questions at the same time, or it's like a raise your hand thing?
Well, I met a student actually 2 days ago who's interviewing at Westchester for a school counseling master's, and she mentioned that part of it is a group Q&A, which is a little different than an interview, and then an individual interview afterwards, and that was on Zoom. So although they're saying group interview, Marissa, don't be afraid to ask, because especially since this is a graduate school interview, ask for the logistics. Say, what part is a group interview? What part is an individual interview? And is the group interview a Q&A? How does it work? It's more than okay to ask those questions. You're not going to come across as being, difficult or anything like that. In fact, I think it'll be a positive for you because you want to know more information and you want to be prepared. They might just be using group interview in the circumstance that there's a component that everybody's in the same Zoom room or whatever together. Any other questions? Well, awesome. Thank you all so much for being on today. I know it is a challenging topic. The main thing is keep learning and keep preparing. And again, reach out to me if you need any individual assistance.
Thank you very much, Nick and Gianna.
Thank you. It's
Thank
nice
you,
to meet
guys.
you all.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And I forgot to actually introduce Nick at the very beginning. He's been with us since 2008, so he is really our career development guru. So Nick, I apologize about that because we had just talked about it before we let everyone into the room. But I also wanted to let you know, if you become students or would like to hang out with us more, you're welcome to join us on April 29th for the next Griffins at Home Young Alumni gathering. It's yoga with one of our alumni who is also a counseling grad from 2013. She got her master's with us, and she owns the Real Mind, Body, and Soul business where she does yoga and other life coaching and other things. So April 29th at 7 p.m. and the registration information will be going up within the next 2 weeks. So
Thank
thank you.
Um,
Thanks for joining us.
Can